Hare Krishna to all of you. Welcome to my channel Shri Krishna Bhakti-yoga, where we are going to see our first series of our book On the Way to Krishna by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. If you all are coming first time to my channel, please like, share and subscribe my videos to get a further update on my new videos. Chapter 1, Throughway to Happiness. Every one of us is searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but practically speaking, we see so few people happy. This is because of so few people know that the platform of real happiness is beyond the temporary things. It is this real happiness that is described in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Happiness is generally perceived through our senses. A stone, for instance, has no senses and cannot perceive happiness and distress. Developed consciousness can perceive happiness and distress more intensely than undeveloped consciousness. Trees have consciousness, but it is not developed. Trees may stand for a long time in all kinds of weather, but they have no way to perceive miseries. If a human being were asked to stand like a tree for only 3 days or even less, he would not be able to tolerate it. The conclusion is that every living being feels happiness or distress according to the degree of development of his consciousness. This happiness that we are experiencing in the material world is not real happiness. If one asks a tree, "Are you feeling happy?" the tree, if it could, might say, "Yes, I am happy, standing here all year, I am enjoying the wind and the snowfall very much, etc." These may be enjoyed by the tree, but for the human being, it is a very low standard of enjoyment. There are different kinds and grades of living entities, and their conceptions and the perceptions of happiness are also all different types and grades. Although one animal may see that another animal is being slaughtered, he will go right on chewing grass, for he has no knowledge to understand that he may be the next. He is thinking that he is happy, but at the next moment he may be slaughtered. In this way, there are different degrees of happiness, yet all of them, what is the highest happiness? Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Sukham atyantikam tyatat buddhigrahyam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam stitaschalati tatvatah. In that joyous state, samadhi, one is situated in a boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. As per Bhagavad Gita 6.21, Buddhi means intelligence, and one has to be intelligent if he wants to enjoy. Animals do not have the real developed intelligence and so cannot enjoy life as a human being can. The hands, the nose, the eyes, the other senses, organs, and all the bodily parts may be present on a dead man, but he cannot enjoy. Why not? The enjoying energy, the spiritual spark, has left, and therefore the body has no power. If one looks further into the matter with a little intelligence, he understands that it was not the body that was enjoying at all, but a small spiritual spark that was within. Although one may think that he is enjoying by the bodily sense organ, the real enjoyer is that spiritual spark. The spark that always has the potency of enjoyment, but it is not always manifested due to being covered by the material tabernacle. Although we may not be aware of it, it is not possible for the body to experience enjoyment without the presence of this spiritual spark. If a man is offered the dead body of a beautiful woman, will he accept it? No, because the spiritual spark has moved out of the body. Not only was it enjoying within the body, but it was maintaining the body. When that spark leaves, the body simply deteriorates. It follows that if the spirit is enjoying, it must have its senses also. Otherwise, how can it enjoy? The Veda confirms that spirit soul, although atomic in size, is actually enjoying agent. It is not possible to measure the soul, but it is not to say that it is without measurement. An object may be seen to us to be no bigger than a point and may seem to have no length or width, but when we perceive it under a microscope, we can see that it has both length and width. Similarly, the soul has its dimension, but we cannot perceive them. When we buy a suit or a dress, it is made to fit the body. The spiritual spark must have form. Otherwise, how is it the material body has grown to accommodate it? The conclusion is that the spiritual spark is not impersonal. It is an actual person. God is the actual person. The spiritual spark, being a fragmental part of him, is also a person. If the Father has the personality and individuality, the Son also has them. If the Son has them, we can conclude that the Father has them. So how can we, as a Son of God, assert our personality and individuality, at the same time deny them to be our Father, the Supreme Lord? Atindriyam means that we have to transcend these material senses before we can appreciate real happiness. Ramanti yogino nante satyananda chitta atmani. The yogi who are aspiring after the spiritual life are also tasting enjoyment by focusing on the spiritual soul, super soul within. If there is no pleasure, if there is no enjoyment, what is the point of going to much trouble to control the senses? What kind of pleasure are the yogis relishing? If they are taking so much of trouble, that pleasure is adanta, endless. How is this? The spirit soul is eternal. The Supreme Lord is eternal. Therefore, the reciprocation of their loving exchange is eternal. No one who is actually intelligent will refrain from the flickering sensual enjoyment of this material body and fix his enjoyment in the spiritual life. His participation in the spiritual life with the Supreme Lord is called Ras Leela. We have often heard about the Krishna's Ras Leela with the cowherd girls in Vrindavan. That is not like the ordinary exchange that take place between these material bodies. Rather, it is an exchange of a feeling through a spiritual body. One has to be somewhat intelligent to understand this. For a foolish man who cannot understand what real happiness is, seek happiness in this material world. In India, there is a story of a man who did not know what sugarcane was and was told that it was a very sweet to chew. "Oh, what does it look like?" he asked. "It looked like a bamboo rod," someone said. So the foolish man began to chew all kind of bamboo rods. How he can begin to experience the sweetness of sugar cane? Similarly, we are trying to get happiness and pleasure, but we are trying for them by chewing this material body. Therefore, there is no happiness and no pleasure. For the time being, there may be so little feeling of pleasure, but there is not an actual pleasure. It is temporary. It is like a snow of lightning which we may see flashing in the sky. That may momentarily seem like a lightning, but the real lightning is beyond that. Because a person does not really know what happiness is, he deviates from real happiness. The process for establishing oneself in the real happiness is the process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, we can gradually develop our real intelligence and natural enjoy relishing spiritual happiness. As we make spiritual progress and as we begin to relish spiritual happiness, we proportionately abandon the material happiness. As we make progress in understanding the absolute truth, we naturally become detached from this false happiness. If somehow or other one is promoted to the stage of Krishna consciousness, what is the result? Upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty, as described in Bhagavad Gita 6.22. One attains that stage, other achievement appears insignificant, and in this material world we are trying to achieve so many things: riches, women's, fame, beauty, knowledge, etc. But as soon as we are situated in the Krishna consciousness, we think, oh, no attachment is better than this. Krishna consciousness is so potent that a little taste can save one from the greatest danger. As one begins to relish the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see other so-called enjoyment and attainments as flat and tasteless. As if one is situated firmly in Krishna consciousness, the greatest danger cannot disturb him. There are so many dangers in life because the material world is a place of danger. We tend to close our eyes to this, and because we are foolish, we try to adjust to this danger. We may have many dangers moment in our life, but if we are training our development in Krishna consciousness and preparing for ourselves to go to home, back to Godhead, we will not care for them. Our attitude will be danger comes and goes. Let them come or let them happen. It is very difficult to make this kind of adjustment as long as one is on the materialistic platform and is identifying with the gross body, which is composed of the perishable element. But the more one advances in the Krishna consciousness, the more he becomes free from the bodily designation and this material entanglement. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is compared to a great ocean. Within this material universe, there are millions and billions of planets floating in the space, and we can just imagine how many Atlantic and Pacific oceans are there. In fact, the whole material universe is likened to be a great ocean of misery, an ocean of birth and death. In order to cross this great ocean of nescience, a strong boat is needed, and that strong boat is the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. We should immediately get aboard to that boat. We should not hesitate, thinking that Krishna's feet are very small. The whole universe is simply resting on his legs. For one who takes the shelter of his feet, it is said that the material universe is no more significant than a puddle of water found in impressions of a calf's hoofprint. There is certainly no difficulty in crossing over small puddle. Tat vidyat dukha samayoga, viyogam yoga samnitam. This intense is actually freedom from all miseries as are arising from the material contact, as per Bhagavad Gita 6.23. We are entangled in this material world due to the uncontrolled senses. The yoga is meant to control these senses. If somehow we can manage to control the sense, we can turn our face to actual spiritual happiness and make our lives successful. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with an undeviated determination and faith. One should abandon without expectation all material desires born of the false ego and thus control all the senses, all sides by mind. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence. Thus, the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From whatever, whenever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6.24 to 6.26, the mind is always disturbed. It is going sometimes this way, sometimes that way. By yoga practice, we literally drag the mind to Krishna consciousness. The mind strays from the Krishna consciousness to so many exterior objects because from the time immemorial, life after life, that has been our practice, and due to this, that may be great difficulty in beginning, when one tries to fix his mind in Krishna consciousness, but these difficulties can all be overcome. It is because the mind is agitated and not fixed on Krishna that it goes from one thought to another. For instance, when we are engaged in a work, memories of event that happened 10, 20, 30 or 40 years ago may suddenly come to our mind for no apparent reason. These thoughts come from our subconscious, our mind, and because they are always rising, the mind is always agitated. If we are agitated, a lake or a pond, all the mud from the bottom comes to the surface. Similarly, when the mind is agitated, so many thoughts arise from the subconscious that have been stored there over the years. If we do not disturb a pond, the mud will settle to the bottom. The yoga process is the mean to quiet the mind and allow these thoughts to settle. For this reason, there are so many rules and regulations to follow in order to keep the mind from becoming agitated. If we follow the rules and regulation, gradually the mind will come under control, and there is so many do's and don'ts. And if one is serious about training the mind, he has to follow them. If he acts whimsically, what is possibility of the mind being controlled? When the mind is finally trained to point where it will think of nothing but Krishna, it will attain peace and will become very tranquil. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me, the verily attains the highest happiness, be virtue of his identity with Brahman. He is liberated, his mind is peaceful, his passion are quieted, and he is free from sin, as given in Bhagavad Gita 6.27. The mind is always concocting object for happiness. I am always thinking, this will make me happy, that will make me happy. Happiness is here, happiness is there. In this way, the mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. It is as tough as we are riding on a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where we are going, but can only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in Krishna conscious process, especially by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then the wild horse of the mind will gradually come under control. We must engage in Krishna's service every moment of our life in order to keep the restless, turbulent mind from dragging us from one object to another in a vain search for happiness in the temporary material world. Steady in the self, being freed from the material contamination, the yogi achieves the highest perfectional stage of happiness in touch with the Supreme Consciousness. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6.28, Krishna serves as a patron for one who is devoted to him. When one is in difficulty, his patron saves him. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the real friend of every living entity. We have to revive our relation with him. The method of reviving this relationship is the process of Krishna consciousness, the practice of consciousness, Krishna consciousness. Mundane, passionate hankering will come to stop. This passionate hankering keeps us divorced from Krishna. Krishna is within us. He is waiting for us to turn to him, but we are too busy passionately eating the fruits of the trees of a material desire. This passionate compulsion to enjoy these fruit must stop. We must situate ourselves in our real identity as Brahman, pure spirit. And here we end the first chapter from On the Way to Krishna. Please subscribe this channel to hear the next chapter from the book On the Way to Krishna by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Thank you. Hare Krishna.